Uncover the shocking truth about my wife's infidelity through a vasectomy test, leading to the revelation our daughter isn't mine. I spent 2 amazing years with my wife in college. We got married the fall after we graduated, and those first years together were really about exploring who we were as a couple. Eventually, we found our rhythm, settled down, and decided we were ready for a family. She stopped taking birth control, and almost instantly her libido skyrocketed. Still, it took 3 years of trying before she finally got pregnant, but at last, we welcomed our beautiful daughter into the world. After our daughter was born, my wife went back on birth control but struggled with all sorts of nasty side effects. Her doctor switched her medication several times but nothing seemed to sit well with her. We had some deep talks about our future, about whether we really wanted another child, and decided, since it was easier for me to reverse than for her to keep suffering with the meds, that I'd get a vasectomy. I had the operation 3 years ago, and after she came off the birth control, she was herself again, full of energy, happier, healthier. Sex became worry-free and honestly even better than it had ever been, even back in college. We were happy. Or so I thought. 3 weeks ago, everything changed. My wife's period was late, not too unusual, but then I started noticing other things. Her breasts were tender, she showed subtle signs of morning sickness. A tickle of dread settled in my stomach. I'd heard the stories, sometimes vasectomies reverse themselves. Still, I needed proof. Before I even told her what I was thinking, I went to my doctor and had my sperm count checked. The results came back, I was still sterile. I said nothing. A few days later, my wife went to her doctor and, sure enough, confirmed, she was pregnant. She insisted I go get tested, so I pretended to comply, though stress was gnawing at me from the inside out. Worried, sickened, I went back and did the tests again, but while I was at the clinic, I took a DNA swab from our daughter and requested a paternity test on a hunch I couldn't ignore. Today, I got both test results. I read them, walked straight to the bathroom, and nearly threw up. I am sterile. Our daughter is not my biological child. When my wife came home that night, I confronted her and showed her my test. She started denying everything, and said the test must be a mistake. I quietly laid out the second test from the previous week. She broke down in tears. I pressed her until she finally admitted she'd slept with someone else, just once, she said. The condom must have failed. I made her tell me the story over and over, each time watching her face for signs she was holding anything back. I warned her, another lie would end us for good. She insisted it was the only mistake. The pain hit hard. I asked her how she could do this to us, to our family, if it had been even remotely worth it. Did she want a divorce? She begged me to forgive her, pleaded with me to let this go, to save our marriage. I told her point blank, I couldn't raise another man's child. Would she be willing to terminate the pregnancy if it meant saving what remained of us? There were more tears. The rest of the night she sobbed, but before going to sleep she whispered that she'd do anything to fix what she'd shattered. I never told her about the DNA test. I lay awake all night forming my next steps. Next week, I'll contact a lawyer and find out if I'll have to pay child support for a child that isn't biologically mine. If she'd ever come clean and told me the truth about our daughter's paternity, maybe, I tell myself, maybe, I could have tried to forgive her, but she waited, thinking she'd gotten away with it, and I can't help but wonder what else I'll never know. Update 1. I met with my lawyer, and honestly, she was awesome. I walked into her office carrying stacks of paperwork, my bank statements, medical records, and those dreaded DNA results. She listened as I told her my story, every detail, no matter how painful. Her assistant sat quietly, jotting everything down while my lawyer scrutinized my documents. When I finished pouring out the whole mess, she started asking me pointed questions, things I hadn't even thought about, and then she laid out my options. Since I live in an at-fault state, it's both a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, it gives me leverage during this nightmare, but on the other, it means things could drag out longer and cost a fortune. As for the first child, if my wife agrees to sign the paperwork, my responsibility for child support can easily be dealt with, but if she refuses, things get complicated. There'll have to be a court-ordered DNA test and then a judgment before I can be released from that obligation, with or without her consent. Either way, the odds are in my favor. My wife has a solid job, making almost as much as I do, so my lawyer doesn't think alimony will come into play. And as for dividing up our property and everything else, we can negotiate most of that before a judge gets involved. The only real downside, thanks to the holidays, the legal papers couldn't be ready before Christmas, but my lawyer promised everything would move forward before New Year's. She told me to keep my lips sealed until my wife got served, and handed me a list of things I needed to take care of before and after Christmas, before the papers hit my wife. There was one thing my lawyer and her assistant pointed out that caught me off guard. Since my wife and I had been actively trying for a baby, there was a chance she genuinely didn't know the baby wasn't mine. To top it off, she has an appointment with her OB tomorrow. Update 2. I'm a man who went through a vasectomy after the birth of our first child, thinking our family planning was settled. Then, 4 years later, my wife ended up pregnant. That moment flipped my world upside down. I went to a doctor and got tested to be absolutely sure I was still sterile, and I was. Not only could I not be the father of our newest child, but a paternity test also revealed that even our daughter wasn't biologically mine. Christmas came and went under this cloud of betrayal. As soon as the holiday was over, I knew it was time to act. I had to wait until after the holidays to have my wife served with the official divorce papers. My sister, ever my supporter, met me at my house so we could start packing my belongings for a move to her place while the divorce process played out, or, at the very least, until my soon-to-be ex-wife moved out and I regained possession of the house. We made 4 carloads worth of trips to my sister's, coming back each time for more. She insisted on being there for both moral support and as a witness to everything, just in case. I even moved the nanny cam into the living room so it would record everything straight to the cloud. Around 10:45 a.m., I got a text from my lawyer. The paperwork had been served. I sent my wife an email letting her know I was at the house and ready to talk when she was. Almost immediately, my phone buzzed, a text from her, full of confusion and annoyance. Why? Blah blah blah. I resent my previous message and waited. Texts and voicemails kept coming in. She never once mentioned the cheating, only that she thought we were working things out, that she expected us to talk before going straight to divorce, that I was destroying the family, shattering our daughter, and betraying everyone. The audacity, she felt betrayed. That stung. For a while, I watched her location update on my phone. It took her 20 minutes to actually leave work, and then she stopped off at Walgreens for a bit before heading home. That stop at Walgreens suddenly made sense when a police car pulled up behind her in our driveway. She'd called the police, saying she was afraid, and claimed there were guns in the house. The officers listened to both of us. I showed them my empty gun safe and said I'd moved my firearms to a secure location elsewhere. Satisfied, we left the topic behind. Back in the living room, I laid out the paternity test results for my wife. It was undeniable proof our daughter wasn't mine. Her jaw dropped, she acted shocked, as if she couldn't believe it. Then she just started crying, deep, shuddering sobs that went on for 10 minutes. I told her this was it for me. This was the final straw, and that's why I wanted a divorce. The police, still hovering nearby, stepped in, told us to keep things civil, and headed out after I assured them I'd be leaving for my sister's place soon. I pressed her, who was the real father of the child. She claimed she didn't know. I asked if there were truly that many men, or if she just couldn't remember names. When I asked how many times she'd cheated, she insisted it had only been with 2 guys. But by then, I'd already set my boundaries. I reminded her of the things I'd said in the past. If she couldn't come clean with the whole truth, that was it, I was done. I told her again that there was no way I'd raise another man's child, and she'd better figure out who the real father was, because I wasn't going to pay child support for someone else's baby. She wanted to know what we'd tell our daughter. I told her that was up to her. She made this mess, not me. I wasn't about to take the blame, nor would I clean up after her this time. Last week I'd already drafted 2 emails, one for our friends and family, including all the paternity results and my reasons for divorce, and another for my wife outlining everything I knew and had told her before. I sent them to my lawyer for a quick review. After a few tweaks, she gave her approval. The moment my wife's car pulled into the driveway that afternoon, I hit send and those emails went out to everyone we knew. The reactions have been intense, one-sided and very colorful, to say the least. I told my wife plainly, if she had just been truthful about everything from the beginning, maybe, just maybe, we could have worked things out. But I couldn't trust a lying serial cheater. If she'd had her tubes tied instead of pushing me to a vasectomy, maybe she could have gotten away with it. Now I told her, get a lawyer, let's move forward, and start the long process of healing, separately. Update 3, I had my second meeting with the lawyers today. We managed to sign off on almost everything, just the house left pending, waiting on the appraisal to come back before we can finalize the split. Motions are officially filed now, and a court-ordered paternity test has been set for all 3 of us. Since my soon-to-be ex-wife didn't contest anything, we filed a no-fault divorce petition. If everything proceeds smoothly, I'll get the house back on February 15th, and the divorce will be final on April 5th. The lawyers did a much better job this time, keeping us apart and limiting any conversation between us to the bare minimum. I have to admit, when she walked in looking pale and completely drained, whether from lack of sleep or too much medication, I couldn't tell. She just stared out the window as the lawyers read everything before we signed the papers. Walking out of that room, I felt like I'd shed a massive weight from around my neck. HR already set me up for therapy starting tomorrow. To my surprise, I found a bottle of champagne on my desk, courtesy of my boss, along with an offer to take some time off. But honestly, I told him I was excited to get right back to work. My ex has already moved into her new apartment after collecting her share of the house equity, and I'm moving back in tomorrow. The DNA test results are in, and the judge has already approved the motions to terminate my parental rights and obligations. The divorce won't be final until April, but for all practical purposes, I'm free. Only contact I've had with my ex is through messages my lawyer relays or meetings at the lawyer's office. I've blocked her and a few of her family members and friends on everything. She said she wants to sit down and talk eventually, but my lawyer advised me that it's better to wait until all the paperwork is final. Recently, I had dinner again with Sharon, the affair partner's wife. We keep each other posted about our ex-spouse's latest life disasters. I almost feel bad for the guy. She got him fired and is determined to drag out their divorce to make him suffer. He used to work for her family's business. When she told her dad and uncle what he'd done, that was all it took. The next morning, they took everything from him: laptop, company phone, credit card, company car, and he left with just a cardboard box of his stuff. It took about 15 minutes. Over these months, Sharon and I have stayed in touch, comparing details about our ex's affairs and supporting each other through the worst moments. We talk on the phone and have dinner once or twice a month to catch up. Last month, Sharon mentioned one of her friends was getting married and invited her, with A+1, her ex, Stan, would be there as well. She floated the idea of me going with her, mostly for moral support, but also to throw her ex off. It would be a weekend event, sharing a hotel room with double beds and keeping it strictly platonic. The whole situation seemed almost comical, so I agreed. We flew in the day before the wedding and had dinner with Sharon's friends. I was introduced simply as her friend, with no mention of our past or divorces. Stan showed up just before the ceremony, and clearly was not pleased to see me with Sharon. He kept glancing over, which amused us both. At the reception, we sat with some of her friends, drank too much, and danced a lot. Stan was across the room, watching us the whole night. At one point, he confronted Sharon, but her friends quickly diffused the situation and took her away. Back at the hotel, we ended up having drinks with two other couples. There were plenty of comments about how Stan looked like he wanted to kill us and a few jokes about what a cute couple we made. Some people asked if we were really together. We both laughed it off, insisting we were just friends. Helping Sharon back to the room, things felt different. There was undeniable tension, and somewhere between drinks and the elevator, we kissed. Good judgment lost the battle to alcohol, and we ended up sleeping together. The next morning, we didn't talk much about what happened, too busy rushing to catch our flight. We did run into Stan during checkout, and he couldn't resist a snide remark before walking off. Once on the plane, Sharon and I finally talked. Neither of us regretted what happened, but we both wondered if the timing was right. We agreed to give each other space to process everything and plan to have dinner next week to talk it out. Neither of us has tried dating since our divorces. I know I haven't even been in the headspace to flirt, let alone get serious. I already have a therapy session scheduled, and this will definitely come up. Still, despite all the drama, we really did have a great weekend at that wedding. Update 4. Sharon and I had that dinner last week. We picked a quiet restaurant downtown, somewhere we could talk without running into anyone we knew. The conversation started awkwardly, both of us dancing around what happened at the wedding. Finally, she just came out and said it. I haven't felt that alive in months. I told her I felt the same way, but I was worried we were both just rebounds for each other. She laughed and said maybe that's exactly what we needed. We agreed to take things slow, see where it goes without putting pressure on ourselves or each other. The timing felt right when my divorce finalized 2 weeks ago. April 5th, Freedom Day. Sharon's divorce won't be final until June, but emotionally, we're both done with our exes. We've been seeing each other twice a week since then, and honestly, it's been really good. She makes me laugh in a way I'd forgotten was possible. But then Monday happened. I was at work when my phone started blowing up. First a text from my sister, then my mom, then 3 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. Finally, my lawyer called. Apparently, my ex had shown up at my old job, the one I'd left 6 months ago when I switched companies after the divorce stress became too much. She was looking for me, demanding to speak with me about an urgent family matter. When my former boss told her I didn't work there anymore, she broke down crying in the lobby. Started telling everyone who would listen that I'd abandoned my pregnant wife and daughter and that she needed to find me because there were complications with the pregnancy. Security had to escort her out. The worst part? She'd brought my daughter with her. My 4-year-old daughter, who still doesn't know I'm not her biological father, watched her mother have a complete meltdown in public. My lawyer says she's been calling his office daily, trying to get him to give her my new address. She's also been contacting my family members, telling them I'm being cruel and that the baby might be in danger. My sister finally told me that my ex claimed she'd been having bleeding and needed me to take her to the hospital because she couldn't trust anyone else. That's when I realized what was happening. She's due in about 6 weeks, and reality is hitting her hard. She's about to be a single mother of 2 kids, one of whom isn't even her ex-husband's, and she's panicking. I told my lawyer to send her a cease and desist letter. No more contact, no more showing up at my old workplace, no more harassing my family. If she has a medical emergency, she can call 911 like any other person. But yesterday, Sharon called me upset. Apparently, my ex had somehow gotten Sharon's number and called her. She told Sharon that I was the father of her unborn child and that I was refusing to take responsibility. She begged Sharon to talk sense into me and said she knew we were seeing each other. Sharon handled it better than I expected. She told my ex she had the wrong number and hung up. But it shook her. When we met for coffee later, she asked me point blank if there was any chance the baby could be mine. I showed her the medical records proving I'm sterile. The vasectomy was successful, my sperm count is 0, and I've been tested twice. It's physically impossible for me to be the father. Sharon believed me, but I could see the doubt in her eyes, not about the paternity, but about whether she wanted to be involved with someone whose ex was this unstable. Then this morning, I got a call from my daughter's daycare. My ex had tried to withdraw her, claiming she was moving out of state to be closer to family. The daycare director knows about our custody situation and refused to release her without proper documentation. When my ex started screaming that I was an unfit father and that I'd abandoned them, they called the police. The police report states that my ex was emotionally distraught and making incoherent statements about paternity and abandonment. They didn't arrest her, but they did flag the incident and advised her to seek counseling. My lawyer is pushing for an emergency custody evaluation. Even though I'm not the biological father, I'm still legally responsible for my daughter until the court officially terminates my parental rights, which won't happen until after the paternity test results are officially filed next month. The irony isn't lost on me. I'm fighting for custody of a child who isn't biologically mine while simultaneously trying to get out of paying child support for her. But I love that little girl, and watching her mother spiral like this is terrifying. She doesn't deserve to be caught in the middle of her mother's breakdown. Sharon has been incredibly supportive through all of this, but I can see the strain. Last night, she asked me if I thought my ex was dangerous. I told her I honestly didn't know anymore. The woman I married wouldn't have acted like this, but then again, the woman I married wouldn't have cheated on me with 2 different men either. I have a meeting with my lawyer tomorrow to discuss emergency custody options. Part of me wonders if I should just walk away from all of it, let my ex figure out her own mess and start fresh with Sharon. But every time I think about my daughter's confused little face when her mother was screaming in that daycare, I know I can't abandon her. Not yet. The pregnancy is due in 5 weeks. I have a feeling things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Update 5. The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for this morning. I barely slept last night, running through every possible scenario in my head. My lawyer had prepared me for the worst, that the judge might not see my ex's behavior as immediately dangerous to our daughter, despite the daycare incident and her increasingly erratic calls to my family. I arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, but my ex was already there, sitting in the hallway with what looked like a new lawyer. She looked terrible, pale, dark circles under her eyes, and noticeably bigger now at 8 months pregnant. When she saw me, she immediately started walking toward me, but her lawyer grabbed her arm and pulled her back. The hearing itself was a blur. My lawyer presented the police report from the daycare incident, screenshots of the dozens of voicemails my ex had left for my family members, and testimony from the daycare director about my ex's attempt to withdraw our daughter without proper documentation. My ex's lawyer argued that she was simply under stress due to the pregnancy and that her actions were those of a concerned mother trying to protect her child. Then the judge asked the question I'd been dreading. Mr. Name, given that you're currently pursuing termination of your parental rights, why are you seeking custody of this child? I took a deep breath and told the truth. Your Honor, regardless of biology, I've been this little girl's father for 4 years. I love her, and right now, she needs stability. Her mother's behavior is becoming increasingly unpredictable, and I'm concerned for my daughter's safety and emotional well-being. The judge granted me temporary custody pending a full psychological evaluation of my ex. She would get supervised visitation twice a week until further notice. As we left the courthouse, my ex's lawyer approached mine. Apparently, she wanted to talk to me privately for just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but only with both lawyers present. That's when she dropped the bombshell. I lied about the paternity, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This baby. It might be yours. My lawyer immediately started objecting, but I held up my hand. What do you mean might be? She started crying again. The timing, I wasn't sure before, but I've been thinking about it, and the dates. They could line up. What if your vasectomy failed? What if the first test was wrong? I felt like I was going to be sick. I've been tested twice. I'm sterile. But what if? No. I cut her off. I'm done with your lies. I'm done with your manipulation. The baby isn't mine, and even if by some miracle it was, I wouldn't trust you to tell me the truth about what day of the week it is. Her lawyer tried to interject something about paternity tests, but mine shut him down immediately. My client has medical documentation proving sterility. This is a desperate attempt at manipulation. But as I walked to my car, doubt crept in. What if she was right? What if the timing actually did line up? I called my doctor's office from the parking lot and scheduled another sperm count test for tomorrow morning. When I got home, Sharon was waiting for me with takeout and a bottle of wine. I told her about the custody hearing, about getting temporary custody of my daughter, and then I told her about my ex's latest claim. Sharon set down her wine glass and looked at me for a long moment. Do you believe her? No. But you're going to get tested again anyway. I nodded. I have to be sure. I know, she said softly. And I'll be here when you get the results. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about what my ex had said, about the timing, about the possibility that I'd been wrong about everything. At 3 a.m., I got up and went to check on my daughter, who was sleeping peacefully in her old room. Looking at her, I realized something. It didn't matter whose DNA she carried. She was mine in every way that mattered. But if this new baby was actually mine? The test results came back this afternoon. Still sterile. 0 sperm count. The doctor assured me that vasectomy reversals are extremely rare and would require surgical intervention. There was no way I could be the father of my ex's baby. I called my lawyer immediately and had her send the results to my ex's attorney. Within an hour, my phone was ringing. It was my ex, calling from a number I didn't recognize. "Please," she sobbed into the phone. "I'm scared. I don't know what I'm going to do. I can't do this alone." "You should have thought about that before you cheated," I said, and hung up. But 20 minutes later, my sister called. "You need to get over here. Now." I found my ex sitting in my sister's living room, still in her pajamas, still crying. "She just showed up at my door," my sister explained. "She's been here for 2 hours. She won't leave." My ex looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. "I told him," she whispered. "Told who what?" "The father. I told him about the baby. He said he'd pay for an abortion, but that's it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He's married, and his wife doesn't know." I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction, but it was immediately replaced by something else. Pity? Disgust? I couldn't tell. "That's not my problem," I said. "But our daughter," she started, "is coming home with me. You can see her twice a week, supervised, like the judge ordered." She broke down completely then, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. My sister looked at me with a mixture of sympathy and frustration. "She can't stay here," my sister said quietly. "But she can't drive home in this condition either." I called Sharon, who arrived 20 minutes later with a calm efficiency that reminded me why I was falling for her. She helped my ex to the car and drove her home while I took my daughter and headed back to my house. Later that night, Sharon called me. "She's a mess," she said. "Complete breakdown. I think she's finally realizing what she's lost." "Good," I said, and meant it. "Her apartment is barely furnished. No baby stuff. Nothing ready for when the baby comes in 3 weeks. Still not my problem." There was a pause. "I know. But your daughter is going to have a half-sibling. A baby that's going to grow up knowing her father wanted nothing to do with her." I hadn't thought about that. My daughter would eventually learn she has a baby sister or brother, and that child would grow up knowing they were unwanted by their father, just like my daughter was growing up learning I wasn't her biological father. "What are you saying?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe we keep an eye on things. From a distance. For your daughter's sake. I'm not sure what I think about that. Part of me wants to completely cut ties and never look back. But another part of me knows Sharon's right. This baby is going to be my daughter's sibling, and that innocent child doesn't deserve to pay for their parents' mistakes. The baby is due in 3 weeks. My ex has no support system, no partner, and apparently no plan. The biological father wants nothing to do with the child. I have a feeling this story is far from over.